All right, it's 5:30. We have a quorum. I'm going to call this meeting to order. All right, the first matter on the agenda is 2.1, General Fund Budget Revision, Salary Increase for Full-Time Bus Drivers. Mr. Guidry?
Yes. This particular agenda item indicates that to reflect or to incorporate an annual increase of $2,500 to the bus driver pay scale would cost an estimated $785,000, with the purpose of that increase to accomplish a few goals. One is to make us more competitive with not only with the markets in the parishes around Lafayette Parish, but also within Lafayette Parish as well. And the second goal would be to help retain our drivers who are currently providing driving services. So those were two of the key main driving forces behind our recommendation for this increase.
All right. Can I get a motion?
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion for discussion purposes that we go ahead and approve the $2,500 annual increase to the 17-18 bus driver pay scale with an offsetting budget increase to the sales tax revenues.
All right. Mr. Angel? All right. All right. Are there any comments from members of the public? All right. Members of the board? Mr. Centani?
I have a few basic questions. Can someone tell me how many bus routes we have?
This particular calculation is based on 245.
Well, no, I wasn't asking about the calculation. I was asking how many actual bus routes.
229 right now, 230, but we're still having to cover some situations, and so Mr. Guidry budgeted at that slightly higher amount to accommodate.
You said 245, Mr. Guidry?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
And how many bus drivers, how many board bus drivers do we employ?
I think we're at 50, approximately 50.
That's
board drivers. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes, I got it reversed. I'm sorry. 183 board. 183. I'm sorry, I got that switched.
And how many contract drivers do we have? Does it?
All right. Yeah.
Okay. So that comes out to 229 full-time bus drivers. Am I? Well, that's what I'm getting. So the 230 routes, does this include? This is everything we have.
Yes.
Every bus route, every child that needs to get to school. That's all of them.
Currently, and we're still working with a few of the gifted and ESL kids. Routing is applying those routes to existing drivers where possible, but potentially we're going to need a few additional bus drivers to fully meet the needs of special ed and ESL.
How many, I don't even know what the correct question is, substitute bus drivers, do we have, how many have currently worked 10 days or more? I bet you this would be a question for Mr. Veed. What I'm driving at is like how many regular subs do we have, right?
For bus drivers, I'm sorry, it's not working. For bus drivers, we have right now about, I believe it's 40 that are on all routes.
Subs. So what am I not understanding? We have 229 full-time bus drivers, 183 board, 46 contract, and 40 subs that are on routes right now. We only have 230 routes, but that's 269. What am I misunderstanding?
The subs are covering some of those 229. 40 subs are covering some of those 229 routes.
Do we have 20% of our employees not coming to work on a daily basis?
You have several people on extended medical leave, yes, sir, that workman's comp, extended medical leave.
20%?
It's working out. Okay.
All right, so I'm understanding it. We have 230 routes, 229 full-time bus drivers, 40 subs who are basically working every day, these 40 subs.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, trying to think of the question I want to ask. I'll think of it in a second. I need a second to digest this.
One of the questions I had on the bus driver salaries in Acadiana, it shows the sub pay rate and then sub pay rate once they've stayed on a route a while. It still reflects 10 days. 2 weeks ago, did we not change that to 5?
Yes, sir, we did.
It's 5. I don't think this has anything to do with the motion, but it would be a request. Could we just look at a flat sub rate, not a $55.87? Could we look at a flat sub rate that is maybe a happy medium or $75 or $80 a day, to where, you know, the subs are, they know what they're going to make. I don't know if that makes sense, and I don't even know if that fits into it. Doesn't fit into this, but it's just a suggestion. Just talking out loud.
Mr. Latchley?
Yes.
The last meeting, we discussed that I had gone to transportation to ask them why didn't we just start them out at the rate, and they said it encourages them to work every day because you have to start over if you miss.
Okay.
That's the reason, because they don't want them. That's to encourage them to. So that's why we made it 5 days instead of 0 days, to get the 187. It was.
I now agree with that. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not thinking out loud anymore.
Along those lines, how many more subs do you think would come on board if the pay were starting on day one? Would it make a difference? If the pay were more competitive, how many more subs would we have? Yeah.
Oh, I don't think. I mean, when we tell them if they call, just work 5 days. I don't think that's a tremendous amount of difference that would make that much difference. I really don't. I think the 5 days is good because it just keeps them. Anything we can do to encourage attendance, and encourages attendance.
So increasing pay doesn't encourage attendance?
It does, but what happens is if we started on day one, then if they miss, so they work 2 weeks and they miss, it goes back, right? So it encourages them not to miss so they can stay the higher rate. See, they won't miss so they can stay the higher rate is what I'm trying to say. Did that answer your question? Okay.
It seems to me that with the various proposals for tonight, that part of the idea is to have a permanent full-time staff on board, which would reduce the number of subs that we need to use anyway. So that it's more cost-effective in the long run, I think, generally, to have the full-time staff rather than subs. So, Mr. Lashley?
And I think the one thing I'd like to encourage, as I look at what other districts make and what we're trying to do today and the amount of subs we have, I would like this system to encourage contract drivers to come back. Start going more to contract drivers. I'm a believer that it works. This system used to be all contract drivers, and over the years, probably the last 40 years, has dwindled down to 46. I'd like to see 70 or 80 contract drivers on our payroll. I believe in the long run, it's better for our system. I really do. I don't think we could ever get to 50-50. It's nothing against board drivers, but I just think if we had a better mix, that's just my opinion because I've dealt with a lot of contract drivers in my lifetime, and I just think we should encourage or open it up to at least allow this to happen, to see what happens. Maybe no one applies. Maybe 10, 15, 20 people apply, but I think we ought to look at contract drivers, of increasing our contract drivers.
Mr. Lochley, the staff and I, transportation and Billy and Joe met today. We philosophically have no objection to your request. In fact, it is true, the board, Lafayette Parish, has moved away from contract drivers to board-owned drivers, but philosophically we understand that if a driver shows up with a bus, and we would have no objection to hiring them as a contract driver. The board still has an incentive plan to help those individuals that need to purchase a bus. I had conversations today with the Lafayette Schools Federal Credit Union about the idea that they might be interested in providing some loan money for people interested in purchasing buses. Of course, that's a separate matter from the Lafayette Parish school system, but we would encourage anybody interested in being a contract driver to just to come to the office, and we will seriously consider their employment.
Right now, it's my understanding that the board drivers are just a strictly salaried employee. Is that correct?
That's true, and then some of them pick up field trips and substitute runs, but yes, sir, they are straight salary only.
Is it, and this may be a question for Mr. Hammonds, but along the lines of the incentive pay, is it possible to have some kind of mileage component to the board driver? So, and I'll tell you where I'm going with it. If anyone has any improvement upon this idea, I'm happy to hear it. Idea being that I think we'd like to have drivers drive more miles when possible, and probably very little incentive to do that if you're a straight salaried employee and you don't get any extra money on top of that. So is there a way for us to perhaps introduce a mileage component to the board driver's pay?
Yes.
Thank you. I love it. I love that answer.
As long as it's done prospectively. You can establish any type of salary schedule you want for employees so long as you do it for the future.
Okay. So what I'm hearing, I'm trying to kind of distill the root problem that we're trying to solve. What I'm hearing is that we have, and I'm not going to say that, I don't want anybody to think I'm saying people don't show up to work, but we have a problem where we have 200, let's call it 270 people who can drive a bus, and we're having trouble driving 230 routes. And so I think from my point of view here in that number, I think an incentive plan, some kind of bonus structure or some kind of incentive program to incentivize attendance is important, because I think that goes a long way and it's cost effective towards getting that number down. You know, if we have 245 people showing up every day instead of 229 or whatever it is, if we're 225, that goes a long way without actually having to hire extra bus drivers, and we get to take care of the people that are already working so hard driving these buses. The second thing, I think, is that, like Mr. Lachele, I think we really need to take advantage of the existence of contract drivers. If they're out there and it's a matter of us not, if we have longer routes and these people are sitting at home with their bus and we're having trouble finding people to drive these longer routes, let's pay the extra money, even if it includes a mileage component. I mean, because, you know, the most important thing is we're not doing our job if kids aren't getting to school. So I think it seems like, yes, we do have a shortage of people applying for these jobs, but we also have some areas in our employment policies where we might be able to more effectively spend some of this increase in the budget right here. Thank you.
Mr. Broussard.
Two questions. At one time, we had a cap on the contract drivers as to how many we are going to allow. I don't know, 80, 90 at one time. Did we do away with that, or is that still in place? Or there's no cap on how many? When we went to on our own bus, we sort of got away from contract drivers because of that.
But there is no cap. At one point, it was right at 50-50. We had roughly 150 contract drivers and 150 board drivers. I think one of the things that has contributed to the decrease in the number of board contract drivers is when they first start, and this was years ago. This preceded. I saw the back end of it when I got here 10 years ago. You have guaranteed mileage when you buy a bus, because they need to be assured for a certain time period that those miles are not going to decrease because they have no payments to make. Those guaranteed miles were pretty substantial. Some of them couldn't even be driven in the amount of time that the driver had to drive the routes. So when as those guaranteed miles dropped off from the standpoint that they have to be offered for a certain time period, we did two things. We redid the routes, which made them more efficient and in a lot of cases shorter. And we also, even if the route wasn't redone, we adjusted those mileage rates to the miles that they were actually driving. So when that took place, as those individuals retired, the number decreased. So that's sort of the historical perspective of it, in a nutshell, from what I have seen. And of course, it's become a little bit more challenging looking at the more current situation. It's become a little bit more challenging, with regards to the finances of it. As maintenance on the buses, continue to go up. You're paying more for per hour for the mechanic and for your maintenance supplies. We probably could take a look at tweaking some of the supplements to better reflect that. I don't think it would be very, very material, but it would acknowledge that has in fact occurred. And every little bit helps when you're trying to cover your bills on a monthly basis. So I think it's those two contributing factors that have brought us to where we are today. Just my opinion.
Another question: when do the board drivers get extra money for field trip? Is that or that's all included in their salary?
No, if they're running field trips, they work off a pay sheet on that. So that's in addition to their regular salary.
So I agree with Mr. Centani. I think that some kind of bonus structure is something to look into. I would hope that it wouldn't directly be tied to mileage. I think one of the reasons stay away from that is unfortunately we've seen, and I know that there have been audits in the past few years where some of these drivers were driving many more miles than they should have and needed to. However, I do believe that they need more pay, and I will be supporting that. So I don't have the answer, but I would wholeheartedly agree that it should not be directly tied to mileage, because that's too easy to manipulate. I also disagree with the idea of going back to contract drivers, and here's why. There's a reason someone would want to be a contract driver over a board driver, and it's not so that they have the opportunity to pay a bus note. Okay? It's so that they can make a certain amount more money. I think they should make a certain amount of more money now, and without the burden of a bus note, without in the economy now them having to try to go out and get a loan to buy a bus. We've also seen the problem where we buy buses in bulk and we get better deals that individuals can't get on these buses. We've also seen the insurance scenario. When we increased the minimum requirements, then we had to subsidize it, and that was compared to what we were already paying for board drivers. So the non-obvious stuff is what bothers me. You know, Mr. Guidry alluded to it. Fuel costs, maintenance, all of those things are non-obvious. It's not just the salary of the bus driver that's the main issue here. So I think, you know, being a board driver and getting paid more money is better for everybody, because they don't have to buy a bus, they get more money, and we still save money, because the gap between a board driver and a contract driver, especially the ones who we've seen padded miles since the beginning of time, that gap is huge. And so we're just trying to right-size the system. They do need, in my opinion, I will be supporting a pay raise. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I just hope that we don't directly tie it to mileage, and that we don't work backwards, because this school system has worked for many years to try to get a grip on a board driver scenario.
All right, I know Ms. Morrison has a comment, but very briefly, I'd like to bring our focus back into the particulars of this motion with the increase of the annual salary to $2,500. I do see that our last agenda item is more general and is asking the board for different ideas or options for addressing. So if we could defer these kind of general comments about board versus contract and those sorts of things to the end, then we can address each of these action items. But Ms. Morrison, you can, whatever your comment was. But
okay, I'll just wait, because there was some ideas that I have, so I'll just wait. Thank you.
Thank you. So if we have any other comments on increasing the salary by $2,500 a year, which is the current motion on the floor, I'll entertain those. Mr. Centani.
I'll make a substitute motion that we defer a decision on this until agenda item 2.5. And I'll just give my reasoning. 2.5 says that the board identify and approve options for increasing our school system's ability to hire additional bus drivers and address the current bus driver shortage. I read that to give us the ability to approve this there, while also taking into account any discussion that we have on the previous 3 agenda items. That's my rationale for that motion.
Okay. Any discussion on the substitute motion?
Question. Are you suggesting changing the order, or leaving it in the same order and just taking 2.1 and moving it down?
No, I'm suggesting that we can make a motion to increase it by 2,500, or any combination of things on 2.5.
Okay.
And hopefully, if you disagree with that reading, I'll
Great. As long as whatever the suggestions are have had adequate public notice for the public meeting.
Well, and I'm certainly not deviating from any of these options that are listed on these previous items.
All right. So if there are no comments on the substitute motion, then I'll call for the vote on that. Dr. Shastel.
For, 3 against. Dane.
All right. With the abstention, that passes, Council. All right. So the next agenda item is 2.2, General Fund Budget Revision, option to address shortage of bus drivers of the intern position. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam President, I move that we discuss approving. Is that something we can do? Because we can all, we can handle all these in 2.5 if we all kind of come to a conclusion. But we still certainly have questions about them, right?
Well, I mean, we typically make the motion, then discuss it, and if we want to change it, then the substitute motions are made.
Well, then I'll move that we approve a general fund budget revision, increasing the amount of $260,000 to fund 10 school bus driver intern positions, with an offsetting budget increase to sales tax revenues.
All right. Any comments from members of the public on this item? All right, members of the board. Mr. Centani.
Ms. Thibodeau, can you explain to me how this job works? Is this a position that someone has for 75 days?
Ms. Thibodeau, if I could interrupt.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
So, yeah, so the vision, the thought is if somebody's looking for a career change, wants to come on, wants to be a board driver, but their current economic situation is such that they can't afford to quit a current job to pursue a CDL and bus driver endorsement, we would go ahead and take on an intern. We'd take on the individual as a bus attendant. So not only do they help us with supervision on our bus routes, they get used to the Lafayette Parish school system culture, the way the district works, the way transportation works, and we give them basically 2.5 months to work towards CDL and bus driver's endorsement. And when they've met that requirement, they have a higher paying job waiting for them.
What is the salary schedule for this job? Is it bus driver?
No, a starting bus attendant is about just under $11,000. I want to say $10,700. It's something. It's very little, but hopefully it keeps them interested and committed to working on a CDL for a permanent position.
And how do 10 spots at $11,000 equal $260,000?
Mr. Guidry will explain to you that the budgets, group health and retirement for these lower paying positions is extremely high. You're getting close to 50% of the cost of the salary for a bus attendant.
All right, so that gets me to about $175. Where's the other money coming from?
Well, we looked at where they may come in on the salary schedule. If they have a few years of experience, it could be closer to 13,000, and that gets you to 26. So we try to allow for different years of experience that the individuals may come in at.
What kind of experience would qualify somebody to be an intern?
I think whatever experience would be counted for a bus attendant, and I would ask HR to comment on that.
We actually would use what we call relevant experience. So as long as they have any kind of experience working with children, or it could be somebody who's already in the school system, maybe in another job, maybe it's an actual bus attendant that we have right now that's working, that would just move into this program while they're getting their CDL.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, then I'll call for the vote.
Six for, 1 against, 1 abstain.
All right, the next item on the agenda is 2.3, general fund budget revision, option to address shortage of bus drivers attendance incentive. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam President, I move that the board defer this item until 2.5.
All right, all right. Got a second by Dr. Shassel. Any comments or questions on deferring this? All right, then I'll call for the vote.
Three for, 4 against, 1 abstain.
All right, so the motion to defer failed, so I'll entertain a motion.
Let's see, how is this going to read? I'd like to make a motion that we approve the revision increase in the amount of $112,400 to fund school bus driver attendance incentive plan with an offsetting budget increase to the sales tax revenue.
I'll second.
All right. Any comments or questions from the public on this particular agenda item? All right, members of the board. Mr. Lashley.
I'd just like to get staff to please go ahead and explain it so that everyone is very clear on how this incentive would work.
Yes, sir. The plan or the program would be to where starting in the spring of 2018, from the first day that the spring semester starts till the last day, if a bus driver were to use 2 or fewer days of their leave, sick leave or personal leave, then at the end of the school year, everyone who has done so can essentially cash out or be paid for up to 2 days of that sick leave. It would reduce their leave that they actually have in the system, and we would be able to cut them a check for what their current rate of pay is, current daily rate of pay is for those 2 days, up to 2 days.
How many sick leave days does a bus driver get?
In a year, they get 10. 2 can be used for personal leave.
Does sick leave roll over year to year?
Yes, sir.
What's the most number of sick leave days a bus driver has?
The most, say it's, in 1 second.
Yeah, I know it's probably you. I know it's probably you. My blessed mother retired and kept getting paid for a year after she retired. She wasn't a bus driver, but she worked for a state university.
You want to know how much the most they can get in 1 year?
No, I want to know what is the highest number of accrued sick leave days.
I can't tell you right now. I have to look at it.
Somebody just chimed in with 175. Thank you for coming to work. I know you don't accrue those days unless you show up. So thank you for coming to work.
There's already a program in place through the state that the days that are not used for sick leave can actually be used to increase your service credit for whenever you retire.
Is that the DROP program?
No, sir. It's a different program.
Okay.
And they can also be paid out for up to 25 days of those sick leave days.
So I'll tell you what, I'm firmly in favor of an incentive plan. I would have liked to do it as a part of the raise itself, and maybe not do the full amount as in the salary schedule, but have something else as an incentive plan, and even go farther with the number of days. I assume that's possible for us. If they get 10, we could go to all 10 if we wanted to, right?
Yes, I suppose as long as it's legal, I'm sure you could.
Mr. Hammonds, as long as it's prospective, right? We could do all 10?
Yes, there are some other issues that I'll need to bring to your attention in a moment, but the answer to your question is yes.
Okay. And I don't know what I want to propose here. I know the idea behind it is I want people who show up and do the work to get paid. That's what I want. And I think we can all agree. But at the same time, I don't want anyone to feel penalized if they are actually sick and have to miss work. I don't want people feeling the pressure to show up and drive with the flu or on medication because they don't want to ruin their perfect attendance. So I understand the risks involved with the incentive and the positives involved with the incentive program. So if anybody has any comments or anything on a better configuration of this, I'd increase it to $350,000 and reduce the amount of the raise and try to configure this.
Sorry, I know that all of you are very interested in the topics, but I can't have conversations going on in the audience, please, because this is being recorded and it interferes with the recording. Okay?
I'd certainly welcome your input. I mean, I'm trying to figure out a way, because I'm hearing I'm seeing the problem here that we need to incentivize not only recruitment, but we need to incentivize attendance as well. And so, how can we effectively do that? That's what I'm asking. All ears. Thank you.
You do for the recording.
Okay. Hi, I'm Lynn Cormier. I've been a bus driver for 17 years. I was in school food service before that. I have a total of 27 and a half years in the system. I used my sick days when my kids were sick, when I had the flu, because when you have the flu, you can't get up to go and get on that bus if you wanted to, or go smell food when it's cooking. Can Billy Guidry find out how does the city work their sick days that are not used? The city employees, when they retire, they get paid their sick leave that was not used. I don't know how they do it, if it's a certain thing or because we're with the state we can't do that, but that would be a great incentive to know that when I retire, I will get paid my days that I did not take. And that I love my job, so I don't, unless I'm sick and something's bad happened, I don't miss. Plus, I'm a contract driver, and I don't want anybody driving my bus. I pay for that insurance, and I have that liability and that. But that is something I'd like to see looked into, is how the city can do it, and if it would be possible for y'all to do it instead of doing just the 2 or 4 days at the end of the year. That's not going to stop them from wanting to take off if they want to take off. And that now you start talking about big bucks when you not have 100, 150 days that you came to work and you're going to get your pay. Then people may start saying,
Now you see, I'm not.
Is it worth taking off to go hunting, or is it worth taking off to go just run the roads, or worth
And I'm
going
not
to
concerned about somebody who's accrued an entire school year of sick leave over 27 and a half years. Clearly you show up.
Yeah.
You know, right? And so we're trying to incentivize, because the thing I'm concerned about is that we implement this, and what happens is we just reduce by 2 the number of days that somebody doesn't show up.
But mixing the sick day pay and a salary increase, that's 2 different categories. That's why you heard the moans.
No, I understand it's 2 different categories.
And that, but I'd be interested to see if Billy could look into that and see how they do it, and if there would be a possibility for us to do it. Thank you.
I think that as far as incentives go, this is a start. I mean, obviously, the The pay and the benefits for bus drivers have been stagnant for a very long time. So this is a beginning, and once we do get to the discussion of the salary increase at the end of the meeting, you know, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to bring our drivers up to where our neighboring parishes are, especially since we are the probably most populated parish in the area, so we should be leading the list if possible. But I'm in favor of this. I think it's a good way to start. I think we can then assess how it worked at the end of the year and then increase the number of days people can sell back, or if it's not working, then we can change it at that time. But I think it's a good start, a good foot in the door for improving the benefits and salaries of our drivers.
Mr. Centani, the recommendation is for 2 days per semester. We're just envisioning that to start this program, we would start second semester. But the idea is the end of each semester, the employee could earn or buy back up to 2 days. So it would be a total of 4.
Dr. Schessel?
Really quickly, it's 10 sick days per year, right?
Yes, sir. It's 10 sick leave days. 2 can be used for personal leave.
Okay, and the program as it's incentivized is, I'm trying to understand how it technically works. If that person, if a bus driver uses 6 of their 8 days for sick leave, they can still cash out the 2?
No, so they would have to use 2 or less.
2 or less
days during the semester.
Okay, and then they could cash out 2?
At the end of the semester, if they use 2 or less days, then at the end of the semester they could cash out up to 2 days of their sick leave. They would give up those 2 days in order to be paid for them.
Okay, so I'm sick Monday, I'm sick Tuesday, and that's the only days that I technically use.
And you drive sick Wednesday.
So I drive
Yes,
sick
sir.
Wednesday and the rest of the semester. I'm not trying to encourage someone to come to work sick. I'm thinking in terms of folks I see in front of me when I'm at work. Sometimes I need you to go home. Not going to say the lady's name. Works in the garden center where we're at. The medicine she takes, she can't be in the heat at all. I have to go to management and express to them that she either needs to go home, period, or she needs to be transferred into the store in the air conditioner. Otherwise, the lady is going to end up passing away because heat mixed with that medicine is not a very good combination. I'm not trying to, we need to be a little wary about, I understand cashing in sick days, but I don't want to then encourage folks that, you know, someone is using that as a template to get us sued in the future. As far as you guys came out with that bus driver was sick. That bus driver went ahead and drove that route Wednesday trying to get the incentive, and something happened. How much? Okay, I'll stop with that. How much per sick day would the person technically make money-wise? Does anybody know? One sick day would equal how much money?
On average, it's about $112, $113.
Okay, so $226
per day.
Okay. All right, so an extra $226, so an extra $452 per year if they use 2 for one semester, 2 for the other semester?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. Okay.
Mr. Angel?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to speak in favor of this motion, and I want to. I'm probably one that likes to stick to the motion and discussion of the motion, but I want to make a couple of comments. Number one, I think that every day that every employee
does not miss, that day should be given to them, whether it's at retirement or whether it's once a year or once a semester. If they come to work and they have 10 days of sick leave and they don't take it, then I think they should get those 10 days at some point, somehow, some way. But that's for another motion. The other comment I want to make is that if you have a CDL license and if you can pass a drug test, you can get a job. And you can get a job making more money than people that work for us do. And having said that, I'm for this and any other incentives that's being brought up tonight, and that's the prime reason why these people that work for us with a CDL and can pass a drug test, they can make a lot more money in out on the street, so to speak. I mean, it's out there. So I appreciate what they do for us. I think incentives like this, at least it helps. It helps soften the pain somewhat. Thank you.
Morrison.
I'd like to say that I support the raise for the school bus drivers. I do support the option of maybe looking at more contract school bus drivers. From a family with 3 generations of school bus drivers, I know firsthand the importance of a school bus driver. I watched every day driving in the rain and the snow and the responsibility. It wasn't just a job. They got up and they did it. And if they called in sick, it's because they couldn't get out of the bed and they couldn't get in the bus. That's what I saw. So I'm kind of biased, but I'm biased for a reason, because I lived it. So every bit of what we're doing today for the school bus drivers, they deserve it. Because I don't think that people realize the responsibility that a school bus driver has. So I support you, and I hope these incentives that we're putting in place today will encourage more school bus drivers, because it's a very rewarding job, and it could be something you could retire it and, make a good living. So thank you, school bus drivers, for coming out. Thank you for bringing these options to us and your concerns. I thank the board, our administrators, for helping us bring these incentives and these options to us. So thank you for what you do. Thank you.
If being a bus driver today were exactly as you just described it, we definitely wouldn't be having this meeting right now. So I appreciate those comments, because that's what we hope to achieve, is that bus drivers wake up and go to work and not take off unless they're sick. Did y'all mention 20% on average? What was the number earlier?
269 regular bus drivers, 230 routes. 40 subs and 229 actual bus drivers.
So that was 20%. Go ahead, Mr. Matham.
You're missing 40 a day because we have 40 subs, right? That's what Mr. V, unless I misunderstood what you said, Mr. V.
Well, we have 240-something routes.
Well, you have 230 routes and you got 40 subs every day. It's not quite 20%, but it's pretty close.
So across the board, with teachers and other employee categories, what is the percentage of absenteeism on a daily basis? Yeah. There are a lot.
He's going to try to pull it up, but if not, we'll get back to you.
Yeah, there are a lot of great bus drivers in this parish. The issue is that we have 230-something routes. That is a lot of routes. And if you have 10 people missing in one day and you don't have subs for them, it is unacceptable that we call parents the morning of and say, hey, you got to get your kids to school. It is our responsibility to get kids to school. And, we addressed other employee groups in the past. We've seen people taking sick days, and you look on Facebook and they're on a Carnival cruise. We've addressed those issues in other employee groups in the past. And I support bus drivers. No one can say that I don't. But I would rather incentivize them for showing up to work and have an opposite effect for those who take off just because. We how many routes did we cut? What are we down from last year total?
Currently 229, and last year 275 approximately routes. 283.
Unbelievable. We're down that many routes, and we still have upwards of 10 buses some days not running a route. What's going on here? So we need to, yes, raise the pay. We need to, yes, incentivize. But we don't need to incentivize the existing behavior by the 20%. We don't need to encourage the continuation. Dr. Chasson had a good point earlier. However, in my opinion, we're not asking people not to get sick. I mean, that's what the days are for. I don't agree with paying. If you work every day and then you get 10 days on top incentivized, come on, we can't double dip. That we can't do that. But we can say, hey, look, you get 10 days. We know people get sick. We all get sick. But take off when you're sick. And that's all we're asking. That's all I'm asking for. I want them to get a pay raise. Make that clear. I want bus drivers to get paid more money than they get paid today, each and every one of them. But we don't want to find a way to encourage the bad behavior by the 20%. That's just the point I'm trying to make.
And I can tell you, I know Caleb's trying to come up with a number for you, but I could tell you anecdotally as a principal, as you get into October, November, March, April, you have higher faculty attendance issues. The difference is I got them to school, and I can absorb them in classrooms and cover them with teachers on their off period. With the bus drivers, I can't get them to school if I don't have a driver.
Absolutely. And that goes back to my comment where it's unacceptable to call a parent and tell them you have to get your kid to school. The subs should be there for those special instances. Even if this kid gets to school late, our job is to transport these kids to school. Not to call the parent and say, you don't have a ride today. And to have many bus drivers look at the mirror and say, I don't care. That's their problem. I'm off today. That's problematic. And it's happening every day. I'm getting calls every day with this issue. I got a call this morning. I got to get my kid to school. It's unacceptable.
Dr. Chasson. All right, Mr. Lashley.
Okay, we're talking about incentive pay here. And I see some heads shaking no. I see some heads shaking yes. Do they have the option of getting paid for the days or not? Can they say, hey, I'd just rather hang on to these days for when I retire, or I'd rather the almost $500 a year for going to work sick? Yes. I mean, if they have the option, if we approve this, the driver still has the option to get paid or not get paid and hold it till the end.
Yes, sir. They could
Good.
actually not even do the whole 2 days.
Okay. So it can be up to the individual. If someone want an extra $500 a year, they take it. If someone want to hold till they retire and accumulate it, then they can do that also.
Yes, sir.
Good. And I am also for the raise. So if you're counting votes out there, we're looking to do right tonight. We're looking to do right.
All right, Dr. Chasson.
Let me make it clear. I support the raises. Let me make it clear. Just because you may see me in a different manner with which everyone else is speaking, I'm just, I go by Mr. Potato, I'd get my hair cut, the bus is there. Mr. Taylor picked me up, bus 176 at the washateria. I mean, I've been buying toy buses for a kid. When you ask a kid what you want for Christmas and the kid says a toy bus, I support the raises. The only thing that I'm hung up on, I'm going to support it. Only thing I'm hung up on is that we all want and need more money. Everyone gets that. It's if you ask me, hey, Timmy, you want a raise? Oh no, I'm fine. Yeah, give me a raise. I'll definitely take more money. But it takes us back to like why this is all tying in. We've got one group of workers that we have, and the issue has come up. Okay, what is the actual root issue? Well, I don't want to say not enough drivers. We've got, it's 269 you said, Justin? Okay. So it's not the fact that we don't have enough drivers. It's that some of them are extended sick leave, some of them are out, some of them are sick, and we're exhausting the sub pool. If we don't have enough bus drivers, then obviously we need to hire some. So how do we attract them? More money. Okay, I get that. A CDL program that we're talking about, I don't quite agree with. Means the drivers are out, some are out, exhausted, absences. No, I'm trying to reason it out, everyone. I don't want to fight the incentive program, but like when teachers are out, they stack classes. When custodians are out, you just work short. When cafeteria workers are out, they just work short. And we're incentivizing one group of employees, whereas I fully expect, just like I got the text message, I sent it to a couple board members the other day. I mean, she was adamant. So you're incentivizing and you're giving incentives for the ones that aren't coming to work. Gee, thanks, appreciate it. You know, I come to work with what I make, period. So please expect that our group are coming to you and we're going to want the same thing. And I'm like, okay, that speaks volumes. I'm not gonna fight it, but we're short drivers. So at what point, how do we attract them? More money? How do we keep them coming to work? You incentivize I mean, it's an incentive program, but what about the other groups of employees that experience the same thing? And it's very easy to say, everyone, and please understand, it's very easy to say, yeah, that's fine, but what about me? I get that, but it's the next group as well. I'm not going to fight it. It's just I don't agree with both. Okay, you're going to give more money, but then you're going to give an incentive program to come to work and not call in or not use your sick days. To me, it either needs to be a combination of them completely, where I'm fine with giving an even bigger bonus for coming to work. Like, I'm perfectly fine with that. A whole lot more money than what we're talking about, that if I can just keep you coming to work. Because the problem that we have is when Mrs. Malkeisha Como rings your phone. Now, look Damon's face back there, y'all. Damon's nodding up and down. When Miss Malkeisha calls you and curses you out and says, them children still at the bus stop, Timmy, and them children at Falk need to go to school more than any other kid in Lafayette Parish. So you got a truck, you gonna come pick up them children? I'm like, I'm not allowed to, Miss Como. I'm not allowed to. I just need folks to show up and be there. However, I'm not gonna fight it. Just both doesn't really make any sense to me. I'm all for more money, but I don't know.
I do support giving more money. Would that bonus incentive, will that bring us close to our competitors?
The incentive or the salary increase?
The salary increase, would that bring us more? Would it be more inviting for someone to come over to Lafayette Parish with what we are offering versus what I'm looking at, Vermilion Parish and Acadia Parish?
Based on what we're putting in there, from the Labor Department, an entry level for a bus driver, now the data's a little dated, it's back to 2012, but the entry level was $17,840. So with what we have right now, which I believe entry level is $15,822 plus the $2,500, you're looking at a little bit over the entry level that the labor market says. So we're competitive, to put it easily or simply.
Do we, other than money-wise, do we offer anything as far as benefits?
We offer health benefits. We offer supplemental insurance benefits. Voluntary benefits, we offer retirement. Some would say a lot better retirement than you can find in the private sector. So we have a lot of other benefits, more along the line right now. Our benefits are things that are a greater benefit at the end of your career. Healthcare right now, like I said, we offer healthcare to full-time employees.
Are we trying to? I know some time ago, some of the bus drivers retired from other jobs, and it was something they just pick up a little money to keep them going. Do we have any push to continue that, to try to get these retired men and women to take up this as a part-time? Some time ago you drive 2 or 3 hours in the morning, 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon. You had a 9 to 3 job. Is there any incentive to go out and just to pick up the slack from what we're having now?
As far as our own retirees, we can declare a critical shortage, which we try to do every year to let our own retirees come back to drive for us even after they've retired. As far as other retirees, so we don't turn anybody away. Anybody who's willing to get the CDL to become a bus driver, we don't turn anyone away. If they're actually a retired TRSL member and want to come back and substitute or work as a bus driver, it actually wouldn't have any effect against their benefits in TRSL. So we wouldn't turn anybody away who was willing to do that.
All right, I'm going to keep my comments brief. We're talking about incentivizing the drivers to come to work. I would hope that as part of this exercise in improving the transportation department, that we're also studying whether there is a significant or chronic abuse of use of sick time, how much of it is from extended sick leave, workers' comp, and what sort of, I'm going to use the word discipline for lack of a better word, is there in place for those that are abusing? Late call-ins, not bringing doctor notes, not being able to confirm the illness if that's required. I mean, this job is different from the other positions in the school system, because if somebody calls in 10 minutes before their route starts and says, oh, I can't drive today, then it's too late to find a substitute. So that's one issue. The other issue is, my understanding is that people in the administrative office in transportation are usually driving buses. So they're not in the office taking care of administrative issues, which is tracking the call-ins, trends, abuses, or anything like that. So we need to have sufficient number of drivers to drive the route so that the people we have in the administrative office can take care of the administration. I'll probably get more calls about transportation, about the fact they call transportation and no one ever calls them back. That's because the people in administration are driving the buses. So we need to take care of that issue as well. So, as far as this beginning for incentivizing those drivers who want to drive and who want to be there and who want to be at work, I think that many of us have stated that we're in favor. So, all right, Mr. Hammonds.
I feel I have an obligation to bring to your attention an Attorney General's opinion. It's dated September 22. It was released at 4:45 this afternoon. It was released to the St. Martin Parish School Board. St. Martin Parish adopted an incentive plan that would make supplemental payments to school employees based on their attendance in an attempt to lower the employee absence rate. That's the only description of the plan in the opinion. So I don't know what the rest of the plan was, but it appears to be a similar type plan to reward employees who had minimized their number of absences. In a very brief opinion, only a page and a half, only citing one previous Attorney General's opinion, the Attorney General concluded that such a plan was unconstitutional as a prohibited bonus or donation to public employees. Now, I personally am aware of probably 8 to 10 other opinions that have reached the exact opposite conclusion, and none of those are cited herein, But also would call your attention specifically to the statement in this particular opinion which says that in order for it to be constitutional, the school board must show that, number one, the expenditure is for a public purpose. Well, obviously, getting buses on the roads and drivers, that's a public purpose. Number two, taken as a whole, the expenditure does not appear to be gratuitous. And I think that that's a tremendous difference here, because in this particular proposal, what it's saying is that if you have a minimum number of absences per semester, you're eligible to be paid for up to 2 days of your accumulated sick leave. So it's not a gratuitous transaction. The school board is paying and the employee is giving up 2 days. So there is compensation for compensation. The other thing to be remembered as well is that sick leave is paid at the salary rate that's in effect at the time that it's used. So paying an employee for their salary this year may actually save the school board some money if the salary schedule goes up in subsequent years and the same sick leave day were to be used in a subsequent year. So there is clearly a value to the school board in this type of a plan. I can't tell from reading this short opinion whether there was a similar value in the St. Martin plan. And third, the entity must have a demonstrative, objective, and reasonable expectation of receiving at least equal value. And paying the employee for the value of their day of sick leave, I think, would fall into that category as well. So I need you to be aware of the fact that there was an opinion released as recently as 4:45 this afternoon on the issue of incentive pay plans, and there may be some limitations, at least in the eyes of the author of this particular opinion, as far as how you use those plans. It's also impossible to tell from looking at this opinion whether these payments were to be made prospectively or retroactively. In response to Mr. Santani's question before, if you had a salary schedule that paid certain salaries prospectively, then I don't know how in the world that could be construed to be a donation. That is, in effect, the compensation that you are paying the employee for the performance of the services of their job. So, again, I just wanted to make sure that you were aware of this opinion. The media has already picked it up. There's probably will be a story about it tonight on the news or sometime in the near future in the news, and I didn't want you to be blindsided by it.
And Mr. Hammonds, it's your legal opinion that the proposal here meets the constitutional requirements.
That is my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Broussard, you had one more short comment?
Yes, one. I'm concerned about, I know money is one of the greatest issues, but there's more than money that facing the challenge that we have as far as bus drivers and attendants. But in order for us to solve whatever problems we have, we must know all the facts. So other than money, I would like to know what other problems we face with completing our tasks to get our children to and from school and home. I don't know if you asked the audience to weigh in already on this is afterwards, but I would like to know briefly, not from everyone. Not from everyone.
Mr. Broussard, if you don't mind, because again, we still have the agenda item with the different options, which will be more open for new discussions.
Okay.
So if we can go ahead and vote on this particular item, then when we open the next agenda, is that okay?
That's fine.
All right. Then I'm going to call for the vote on the current motion on the floor, please. Yes, sir, Dr. Chasson.
Really quickly. I was talking with Jeremy, and I'm just playing a hypothetical scenario that if I was a bus driver, let's say I called in today, so I didn't go to work today, for whatever reason, sick or not, and tonight I get a $2,500 bonus. Or excuse me, $2,500 added to my salary. I'm very thankful and appreciative for that. I use the sick day; it's mine. I have the right to use it. But that $2,500 doesn't make me more prone to not use my sick days. It just doesn't. You know, I didn't go to work today, and I still got an extra $2,500. What I would honestly like to see, and I'm not gonna fight anything, but I would like to possibly see. I mean, that extra money doesn't make me wake up and go to work tomorrow, but an actual incentive, which I don't know if this would meet the criteria of being gratuitous, but if it can be based on, you know, I forget the terminology you use, Mr. Hammonds. You're proud of the work that I'm basically doing, and I'm showing up for work. That we could go up to, if you could do 2 or less days, and as opposed to the raise, which I know, and I know naturally you're gonna definitely give me money. I want that. Let's just start with that. I want that and leave it alone, and I'll take anything else. However, if we could go to $3,000 or $3,500 or $4,000, that if you could do 2 or less, then you're going to get that much more money, because the basis of what we're doing is, yes, I need to get bus drivers more money and cafeteria workers and janitors, but the problem that we're having is that kids aren't making it to school. So I've got no problem giving a whole lot more money if I can make sure that the kids are making it to school, because this is why we're really here. Like, school board members were arguing about it, and then we were fussing about it, and then we were complaining to each other, then we were calling and venting to each other, like, what do we have to do? It's not going to change anything. I know we're about to vote on something. However, that much more money can be accrued or received to the tune of $335. You know, hey, $2,500 guaranteed. Okay, cool. If we could somehow go with this, then does $3,000 sound that much more better, or $3,500? The folks that are in here probably honestly care to the point where you're probably not really calling in too much. So therefore, this would benefit the group that would be here. I would assume that. How about $3,500, $4,000? I don't know. I don't know what that magical number is, and I'm not trying to. Billy may be like squeezing his feet right now, but more money for. Therefore, if you didn't earn it, you didn't earn it. But if you did, then it's just that much more money. But I understand there's some guys. I get sick. I get sick. I got 2 kids. They get sick. I get sick. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Chasson. All right, and the vote should be up. You haven't voted already? Who are you waiting for, Dorothy? Yeah, no, I mean, our motion's fine. It fits.
4 for, 3 against, 1 abstain.
Okay, so the motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the job description for school bus driver intern. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the attached job description for the school bus driver intern.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Morrison. Any questions or comments from the public on this item? Any questions or comments from the board? All right. Then I'll call for the vote on this one. So,
Eight for, none against.
all right, the next item on the agenda is the general fund budget revision, other option to address shortage of bus drivers.
I think this is where we deferred the $2,500 raise. I will once again make my motion that we fund the $2,500 annual increase to the 17-18 bus driver pay scale with an offsetting budget increase to the sales tax revenues.
All right, second by Mr. Angel. All right, so the current motion is for the annual increase of $2,500. So if any of you in the public have comments on that particular motion, now's the time to make them. All right, members of the board, Mr. Lashley.
I'd like to speak to maybe what Dr. Chasson was talking about a second ago, and it would be my interpretation of the two things we're voting on tonight, the raise and the incentive. I think the raise, this $2,500 raise we're talking about, whether it rewards, bad behavior or bus drivers not coming to work, I think the reason for the $2,500 raise is to be more competitive, to fill our buses and fill our slots. I think our incentive package that we were looking at is to get our bus drivers, give them an incentive for those that maybe don't ever call in sick. So I think it's two totally different issues. The raise is to be more competitive with the outlying parishes so that we can fill our bus driving slots. That's the way I look at the raise, and that's why I support it. Not only to compensate our hardworking people, but also to fill buses and make it more competitive. I don't mind bus drivers from other parishes come and drive for us now, and I think that's the way I see it. So I just kind of wanted to chime in on that.
Dr. Chasson.
Yeah, Britt, I truly agree with you. The only difference in that is that we actually have plenty enough drivers. They're not in the seats driving for that particular morning that we're getting the phone calls. And it's not that we're getting the phone call. It's just kids aren't making the school. It doesn't matter if I get the phone call or not. That just notifies me that, hey, some kids are stuck. Kids didn't make it to school, or they don't have a ride to make it home. So it's not to fill slots. We actually have plenty enough drivers. I just think if we have enough, it's not that we have 100 routes and only 75 drivers. We've got plenty enough drivers. I just need to figure out something. That's why I thought a huge incentive program would do better. That was my only point that I was making. An incentive program keeps the drivers in the seats as long and the kids are making it back and forth to school. That was my only thing.
Mr. Hidalgo.
Yeah, I too want to speak to Dr. Chasson's comments earlier. I think they're right on the money, and I think that, in my opinion, is we're going to find, whether it's 6 months or a year from now, that we just incentivized people actually to stay home more. And I'll be happy to explain that in detail if it's necessary. I won't do it right now. And I do want to say that getting folks to come from neighboring parishes, it's going to take quite a bit more than just matching their pay. They're not going to leave their comfort zone for the same pay. So I would have much preferred, as Dr. Chasson suggested, paid more out in the form of salary instead of incentivizing people to stay home, because they're getting paid for the sick days. So now when this passes, they're going to get paid more to stay home. I also, to speak to what Mr. Broussard mentioned earlier, and I want to hear from the young lady who was coming up, because my vision of this is it's all about money. If we paid bus drivers $50,000 a year, I can tell you one thing, we wouldn't be having this conversation in the foreseeable future. It's all about money. It's all about money. And the last comment I want to make is directly to the bus drivers. I believe the incentive vote was not the right way to go. I would have made a motion and or definitely supported giving you more money rather than incentivizing. I think we're incentivizing people to stay home more. We'll see what happens.
All right, if there are no other comments, I'll call for the vote.
Salary.
What do you mean second? Oh.
7-4, none against.
All right, the motion passes. That concludes the meeting. The meeting is now adjourned.
What?
I'm sorry.
Public comment on other options to address the shortage of bus drivers.
All right.
Second.
All right. So you can come up.
Miss Lynn, come on. That's what we need to know. We need to know how to attract.
Right. So, yeah, this probably should have been at the top of the agenda rather than the bottom, but, so, well, all right, so give us some additional ideas that we can think about.
Well, it's more of an opinion, if that's okay.
That's fine.
I think a big majority of the problem of keeping bus drivers is the discipline. And I'm sure everybody that's here would agree. It's bad. The matrix is just it's not working. You have to have 3 minor infractions before you have a major infraction. So the child's misbehaving for 4 days on the bus, and you're trying to drive, and you bring them to the office, and they get a 15-minute recess detention. That happened today, and I think more people are quitting because of discipline issues and nothing being done than anything else. The discipline has to get better. I did another thing is things being done by seniority. A lot of your senior drivers are being given, and I'm more talking about board drivers right here, are being given extra routes and a lot more mileage instead of letting the newcomers come in and do it. They've earned the position of maybe being a little less stressed than the newcomers. When a lot of mileage was handed out, a lot of it for the contract drivers, it wasn't done by seniority. That's why a lot of them got frustrated and retired. And this is just another opinion about, I think you have plenty drivers, but I was on the road this week a lot, and just at David Thibodeau, and I was driving for him, you had 5 or 6 buses going to Como with a half a bus load. You can fill up those first 3 buses, and you have 3 extra buses to do another route. I just think it's not being done real efficient as far as your satellite stops and stuff. And I'm retired. This doesn't affect me. I mean, I'm just giving my opinion. Am I missing anything else? Huh? Oh. I was spoiled. I've been a contract driver for 30 years. I just retired, and, well, I didn't really retire. I don't know. Did I retire, Dr. Aguilar? I didn't retire. No. Well, I am, but I'm not. I almost died this week driving those buses with a busload of kids in the heat. It was 120 degrees. They just happened to have a little thermometer in the bus when I got in it, and it was 120 in that bus when I left with. I almost died. I'm not kidding. I almost couldn't take it. I guess I'm spoiled. If you're used to it, it's easier. But I think that's another issue also. But as far as, I think we have plenty drivers. I just think we need to fill up the buses. And I know some people are going to get mad at me for saying that. No? Okay. Yeah, you know, everybody should have 3 routes. Everybody. One way or the other. When I was driving years ago, I started in 1987. Some of us had 4 routes. Now, the times were a little bit different, but it can be done. And like I said, I think we have plenty drivers. I think we just running around with a lot of empty buses. And I'm talking 5 or 6 kids in a bus. I'm not talking 20. So I know 3 buses for sure at Como that David Thibodeau going to Como that could be used somewhere else. So that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Along the lines with the discipline, when you bring the child in to your schools, and I know it's very important for the scores to be high in our parish, and they literally tell you they're not going to put the child off the bus because it will affect their school's scores. So they're literally saying if this child can't get to school, parent doesn't have a car or whatever, won't take a taxi to send the child, they're going to keep them on your bus because of the score of the school. When you have 50, 40, 60 kids in a metal tin box going down Johnson Street, and Johnny's wanting to jump over the seats because he knows Mama ain't got a car and she ain't going to pay a taxi cab, so that school ain't going to cut me off this bus. And the kids know it. They know it. They laugh when you tell them we're writing you up. So what? I didn't want to go to recess. It was too hot anyway. The kids know the system better than anybody, better than any of the adults. You know, when you have, you know, a second grade tell you, write me up, I'll just have to stay inside in the air conditioner. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. When a teacher has a problem with an unruly school child in her class, they remove them or they put them sitting in the hall. We don't have the option to stop on Johnson Street and say sit on the side of the street until I go bring these kids and then you can come back in my bus. The discipline has to be tended to. We have the tail wagging the dogs, and those kids know it. They know it. So something's got to be done. Because if you have absentees also, it's a lot of stress. I'm going to stay home today, or little Johnny, when he jumps that seat, might see the door while I'm rolling down the road. You know? I mean, and you can't do them nothing. You can't do them anything, and they know that. There was a police officer on one of the buses last year before last, trying to get an unruly student to sit down, and he literally got in the face of the police officer and said, sit me down. Touch me till I can sue you. The kids know the system. They know they can't be touched. You could tell a child all day long, sit down, Johnny. Sit down, Johnny. Sit down, Johnny, while you go on Johnson Street. Johnny don't want to sit down. What do we do? What can we do? You bring them in, and they get slapped on the wrist. That needs to be addressed. That can keep you some drivers there, and that can take away some of the absences.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Morrison.
Dr. Aguilar, do we have a discipline policy in place? I know at one time, after 3 write-ups, you were actually put off of the bus, and I'm not sure if we're still doing anything like that. So what's the consequences of who's keeping up with the write-ups, how many write-ups, and are students being put off the bus for discipline?
It is outlined in the parent-student handbook that they get every year, and it depends on the infraction. The administrator investigates it. I do know the administrators are wanting the kids at school, and actually the last couple of days we've been dealing about some discipline issues. One thing we do need the help with the bus drivers is that in that initial disciplinary incident with the kid, and I'm excluding the extreme behaviors, we need the bus drivers or the bus attendants to be calling the parents to let them know what's going on. But Mr. Evans and myself will, if you let us know and Mr. Evans deals with it frequently, if a bus driver will call and say, this is what's happening on my bus, the administrator's not doing anything, he steps in a couple times this week. Me and Miss Aloisio dealt with one today. I understand it's got to be safe for the bus. I will add as a footnote, I know back when, 4 months ago maybe, that y'all approved security cameras on the buses. I believe Dr. Aguilar and Angel Tracks signed that contract. And so we are working on the timeline now to put those 5 cameras on each bus during the Thanksgiving and Christmas holiday. So that's in the works. That will help to have digital eyes on the situation, and it will help in investigating a lot of issues.
Thank you, Mr. Hidalgo.
Yeah, I'd like to make a quick suggestion. Maybe Mr. Hammonds could speak to the legality of this. But I got a good, easy fix that I think would be extremely effective. You take every bus driver sitting in this room tonight, and for a 6-month period, you swap them out with an administrator at a school and let them handle discipline. That problem will be solved in 6 months.
January, Mr. Hidalgo.
Mr. Broussard.
I just thought it was important that we allow the bus drivers to vet. And I spoke to a few of them about what was needed, and money wasn't the main topic. Although it was discussed, money wasn't the main topic. Discipline was the main, or lack thereof, was the main topic. And I just wanted the public to know that is one of our biggest problem is discipline, and I agree. We need to do something with it, or we need to get a grip on it, and it's long overdue. So I just wanted y'all to have the opportunity to really say what's the challenge that we're facing in our transportation system.
Thank you, Mr. Broussard. You'll have to come up to the mic if you have a comment. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The meeting's being recorded and it's being live streamed on YouTube, so we want everybody at home to hear your comments. Okay. You can face a busload of children, but not... Oh, okay. Okay. All right. All right. You have one more comment?
Yep. 2 quick things to answer the questions. The matrix system, it depends on the school. I had one school that the infractions were 3 infractions. Whether it was eating on the bus, throwing paper on the bus, or having pencils out on the bus. That was 3 infractions. Then you got your state. Now, you go to another school, and they interpret the matrix as you have to have 3 gum eating on the bus before you can go. You have 3 pushing and shoving on the bus before you can go. So each school is interpreting it a different way of what do you mean by 3 infractions. So that's also a problem with the matrix. Far as for calling parents, we're giving, I hand out slips for my students, and it's to be filled out with the parent's name, the addresses, the grade, and that. And I have space for 3 phone numbers: home, cell, work, and other. Other for emergencies I put, because hopefully they'll put a grandparent or something. And they get in trouble on the bus and you start dialing those numbers. They're disconnected. You go to school the next morning, I try to call Johnny's parents. This is my list of numbers do I have. Do you have another one that might be updated? They have the same ones. We can't. So on my infraction sheets, I just put disconnected. I put the numbers that I dialed, the names that were next to each number, disconnected. So yes, in a perfect world where we could get in touch with the parents, it would be fine. And that. But most of the time, the numbers have been disconnected or they weren't even written correctly. And I don't know how that could ever be addressed. And that, because we do. In our metric form, we know our steps. We know when we have to call. We know when we just write up. We know when we have to move a child. But if we're not given the good information, we can't call parents. That's out of our option. And I'd much rather deal with a parent than have to go sit at school and wait until an administrator is finishing observing classes to tend to Johnny. In between my route, I have other things I should do besides having to go sit. But when you can't get in touch with a parent, that's our choice. And the administrators have a lot to deal with. They can't just drop the hat to come to tend to us. We understand that. So that's just another thing. Anything
Thank you. All right, Mr. Hidalgo? Oh, you didn't want some? All right. So that is our... All right. Are you coming up? All right. So I'm about to adjourn the meeting, so...
These bus drivers that y'all have that show up every day, they need to be taken care of. That's the ones that need to be taken care of. It's hard to find, it seems like, good bus drivers. They care about the kids. I live on the north side. Our route has been horrible. Very bad. You get told, yeah, you can have a bus. It's going to pass in the morning, the afternoon. 4 hours later, you get a text. You need to come get your kid. For the people who work, y'all know how hard that is? When you constant. I'm leaving my 13-year-old at a bus stop. I text her at 8 o'clock. Bus there? No. It was 8:15 this morning. She starts school at 8:30. It's important to have those kids in class, sitting down at their desk for 8:30. I understand her bus driver had surgery. I get that. Things happen. But parents can't continue to worry about their kids at a bus stop. You know, I'm just lucky. I mean, the monitors there are great. I mean, we're on our fourth one. They have all been good. I have another kid to get to school. I have to be at work for 8. How are the parents supposed to do this and keep our job? You know? Do y'all have young kids? Would you leave your 13-year-old daughter somewheres? It's hard. People are crazy these days. You know, you don't know. How long have we been in school? 8 weeks? You know, give or take. She's had 2 bus drivers, but how many buses have you been on? 4? Does that make any sense? No, it doesn't. When I went to school, we had a bus that picked us up. Picked us up at our house. Dropped us off in our driveway. What's going on? Why we can't do that anymore? Okay? I understand people are saying it's the school of choice. Is that the problem? Is school of choice? Yeah, she's out of her zone. As a parent, I'm trying to get the best education for her. You know? I think the satellite stops. I don't like it. Because what's going to happen when something happens to her? Y'all going to call me and tell me that something happened? Our bus stop was supposed to be at Brown Park. You live on the north side? How safe is Brown Park?
this doesn't lend itself to what you're saying, but Brown Park is actually extremely safe. But I understand where you're going.
The day before school started, they had construction equipment all over that parking lot. It was broken up. They had big equipment in holes. I went and asked what was going on. They were going to redo the parking lot. Was that a safe place to be a satellite stop for kids? I don't think so. You know, we got switched to Winn-Dixie. You know, I rather that place because Brown Park right down the road, there's a neighborhood that's not the best, you know.
So, ma'am,
It's just hard.
Well, I know that it was tough for you to get up to talk publicly, and we appreciate your concerns. We're looking for options to improve the incentives and the pay, which we voted on tonight for the bus drivers, so that we can improve our transportation. If you have particular concerns about this year's transportation, then I'm going to direct you to talk to Mr. Joe Craig, sitting right over here, so that he can make sure that any of your personal concerns are being addressed. Just that this is the meeting here tonight is about the bus drivers and incentives. And it's not that we don't want to hear what you have to say, but we have to stay focused on what our particular motion and agenda is.
I'm sorry, I just got off a topic. Yes. The bus drivers, like I said, the ones that you have, the lady right here, she picked up my youngest daughter. She was great. My little one said, why I can't have her again? You know? The kids need to respect the bus drivers. I think y'all need stricter rules on that. But also, you do have some bus drivers that are horrible. Cursing. You know, cursing at the kids. Railroad, the arms go down. They don't want to wait. So they hurry up and speed and go through them with earbuds in their ear. You don't want to reward those type. The ones that are here, like someone said, that's the ones you want to reward. The ones that care about the kids.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say to you guys, I don't think y'all realize the magnitude of what it really is to be a bus driver. When you're sitting in that seat, you have between 50 to 71 kids sitting behind you. All depends on what school. Middle school, you have kids with book sacks, band instruments, and try to fit 3 people in a seat. See how that works. We have issues, okay? But you drive a bus, you're focused on your job, and you have this one kid that's constantly in trouble. You look up, stop it, Timothy, quit it. You're constantly calling that same kid's name over and over and over again. You bring it up to the staff, the principals and stuff. They try to help you, but you guys got to realize we're behind the wheel of a bus. In a classroom, it's not life and death. If the kid continues to misbehave, then we're just going to, try a different way to take care of him. But on a bus, if you have students that are constantly misbehaving and constantly nothing's happening, you report them, nothing happens, guess what? Every time my eyes are looking at that kid, they're not on the road. And so if I can't focus on the road, guess what? Stuff's going to happen. Bad stuff. So we really do need some help with the discipline because it's not working like it is.
So it sounds like there's a meeting in January to talk about the discipline matrix, and I would strongly encourage some representatives from the transportation department to be included so that the particular experiences can be considered when amending the discipline matrix. All right, so I'm sure Mr. Craig will reach out to the appropriate person. All right, thank you for everyone's comments. This meeting is adjourned.